Tuesday. We will go ahead and jump into questions. Whoever wants to start, we'll just go around the horn. So feel free, go ahead, y'all.
Yeah,
Hey,
Jenny,
go
and
ahead.
just go ahead, James.
No, well, okay. Jenny, I was just going to ask you about the SEC team. I think it's cool you had two young ladies make that team. That's a star-studded team, though. If you follow women's basketball, wow, what did you think of it?
I haven't had a lot of time to really study it. Obviously it was really hard to vote for players because there were so many good players on that list. And so just really impressed with the overall league. I mean, we've talked about that, just the talent level in this league. You're talking about future WNBA players, some Hall of Famers probably at that, and even some Olympians. So it's an impressive list for sure.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, Jenny, wanted to ask you about Reagan and just the difference in her. Obviously, she's been pretty good all year, but the last four games or so, just sort of a different level. What to you has been the biggest difference in what she's done and been able to do recently compared to early in the season and before the illness?
Well, I think it's been a combination. And we kind of talked about this last night. I think we've had really good balance on our team. And I think when we're more balanced, then it allows everybody to do what they do really well. And so I think Reagan has been really assertive, and yet it has complemented everybody. I think we've had to grow through, okay, we've got to get it to her. And then we go through, okay, we just shoot the three too much. And then right now, we're just really trying to work on taking what they're giving us. And when we have opportunities, we have those opportunities, but their balance and chemistry right now has been phenomenal. And I think that's been a reason that she's been able to benefit, but also she's really been assertive too.
How tough has that adjustment been from, obviously you knew that was a big need last off season, but you add that piece and to try to work it in with as much experience and sort of knowledge of the system and comfort with what y'all were doing. How difficult has that been to sort of acclimate that throughout the season?
And we've kind of talked about this throughout the season, how the adjustment has been, it's been one that's been challenging but extremely fruitful right now, right? And so you can see the growth, you can see the development of the team, you can see that we've gotten so much better. There's not just a challenge. I think sometimes we really central it to Reagan being like the biggest difference. But I don't know if that's central to that. Look at what Liz Scott does. Look at what Zaya Van has done for this team, and look at the level that Peyton Verhulst is playing at. So I don't think it's central to just Reagan and her position, even though I think it felt like that a lot in November. It felt like that a lot in December. Also because we didn't have her early on in September and October, when you're really trying to game plan and build your chemistry and build a certain level of, whether that's fitness, offense, defense, all those things of playing together. And so you had to use a lot of those months to really put your team together. And then she's out, for a week or a little over a week in February, which isn't when you want her out. And now you can really start to see all those pieces, because I think everybody's really elevated their game. And that's why I say the balance piece, I think, has been the most phenomenal part. I think learning and growing. So yes, it's been an extreme challenge, but also when you build resilience, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. You got to go through some of the storms. And I think that's where we've been. I mean, you've seen us, and there's been games that we would love to have back so that we're not playing on Thursday and we're playing on Friday instead. But at the same time, this is part of our journey and this is part of our story. So there's a reason for it. And you can really start to see right now the chemistry that I get to coach every day. Right now has been so fun. And that's not always the word that coaches get to use this time of year, but man, this team's fun.
Hey, I really appreciate it, Jenny.
Thank you.
Jenny, when you play a tournament like this, the depth you guys have, how much you play for postseason when you can go 10, 11, 12 deep, how much is it really build up to this to be so beneficial for you as a coach?
Well, I love the depth of our entire team. I tell you, it's been It's been so fun to be able to watch us navigate because we've talked about this depth, and that was a really hard thing for us to get as much playing time for everybody as we want to get, and we know that. But right now, everybody's finding value in what it is that they're doing, whether they're playing in the game or not playing in the game, and how many minutes they play versus how many minutes they don't play. And so I think the depth has been absolutely huge. And I think depth comes obviously from ability to be able to step on the floor and contribute however that looks. But depth also comes into play with how much belief you have in that locker room and how much belief you have in each other. And you can see that with this team. You can see us coaching each other at timeouts. You can see us, our bench has energy, but it's not just who can do the most fun thing when somebody, makes a shot or makes a play. It's coaching during the hard times. It's still standing up when it's hard. And then it's pouring into each other from a genuine space. So I think that's been a really cool part of our depth. But as you head into a tournament, I also feel like we're not going into the tournament to say, okay, let's go win the tournament. Of course, everybody wants to win the tournament. We still have time together that we get to play, and we still have time that we've got to get better. Knowing that you're going into the NCAA tournament, knowing that you're going to probably get to come home to start that NCAA tournament is motivation enough to go get better and to continue to have fun playing. And that's really where your depth comes into play, is let's get better. Let's make sure that we can balance as many minutes as we can possibly balance for us to continue to get better, not for game management, but to get better. That is going to continue to help us.
In years past in the conference tournament, there was a lot of familiarity in your opponents just simply because you played them not only that year, but in years past. What about this year? Have you really been impressed with the way your team has been able to adapt to scouting reports to teams you haven't really played a lot in the past?
There's times that I would say yes. And then there were a lot of times I feel like, for example, when you're playing at Alabama, who can shoot the ball and spaces you out, that was a challenge for us to adapt to. And they are so good that the second you make a defensive error and you help where you shouldn't help, they pick you apart. Their experience, their high level play, they're very well balanced as well. And so there were times that I would say absolutely. And then there's times that we have to be able to adjust from one out to the next. And we have to, you've heard me say this live learning so many times, we have to live learn a lot better. And that's where, because you're going to go, you don't know who you're playing. You don't know. Georgia and Arkansas are very different basketball teams. So you have to prepare for both, but you have to be able to get your focus the second that game is over. And that's something that this time of year really tests to see how much you've been able to do that. So I do think it's been nice. Every opponent's new, and that's also a major challenge. Right. So every game that we've been playing lately is an NCAA tournament game. It's a team that you don't know, you aren't familiar with. Now we go and we're playing a team for the second time, but not the 10th in the last 5 years. Right. So it does make a difference. But it is something that it allows us to really live learn as well.
Jennie, thanks a bunch. Good luck this week. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Coach, I'm curious, what kind of is the schedule for the next couple of days when you get to the SEC tournament, things like that? What's your schedule here? What are you going to do run-throughs at a certain time? How's that going to work for you all?
Yeah, so we actually practiced yesterday, and I thought they were really engaged. I thought they were really good. Today we're off, and then we'll practice tomorrow. And then you really want to treat. Again, you want to just focus on getting better in those games. And so you do so much game-like simulation in practice that, in order to play 4 games in 4 days, you got to have everybody. And so you can't just rely on one person. You can't rely on 2. And so you've got to treat it like I mean this, I don't know. I know I'm not going to articulate this well, but you have to treat it like a practice where everybody has to show up and give everything they have in every moment. So we know that from a game standpoint that you want to do that. But when you're in a tournament like this, everybody has to do what they do. So there'll be certain times, I mean, the game times, are unique. Your pregame warm-up is going to be unique because we're the second game, not the first game. So you're constantly having to be flexible and adjust. We're at a new place. We've never been to Greenville. So that's something that's also different. Your surroundings. So you don't necessarily get in the arena before your game time. So you've got to take those, once you visualize it, you've got to take that serious as well. Just in terms of taking your time to visualize, but it's when you're trying to play that many games and max out. The nice thing is you have a whole week off before the selection. So there's plenty of time to rest. So give everything you got. I don't know if I necessarily answered your question. I think it just depends on when the game is and all of that.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jenny, wanted to go back to a player that you mentioned earlier, Liz Scott, and ask you about her progress and what's really stood out to you about the way that she's attacked this season after what she went through last year.
Yeah. I mean, you can't help but love Liz, and she's so coachable. And we talked about this so much last year where when we were, when we found out that she wasn't going to play, you go through so many emotions, and she never really let her team see her cry. If she got emotional at a moment, she would just excuse herself for a second, and then she would come back and she would be solid for her team. She's still doing that, even though it's not easy to try to navigate coming back. She only shows strength to her team. She shows humility to her team. She will challenge people on her team. She's fun. She can be, coached really hard. She really responds well to truth telling. Not all players do. She wants to know. She just does, and then at the same time, she can see what Reagan's done is really good. She can see that Sky is working through a lot of it, her own adversity of trying to manage so many things. And yet she still challenges and builds up Sky every day. She pours into Landry Allen and Beatrice Culleton. And I mean, she just expects so much of everybody. And I think what Liz did at LSU, and whether or not I agree with the consequence is irrelevant. But what I do think that's pretty phenomenal is she was the protector of the team. So it wasn't her and getting mad and got emotional and just shoved somebody. She did it because somebody went at her teammate. And I think that's something when you're in this kind of a league and you're new, you have to have somebody step up and pay the ultimate consequence. And she did that for us. And I think that's a legacy decision that she made, even though, again, you don't want violence, you don't want any of those kinds of things. But her intent was to protect her team. And I think that she shows that when she steps on the floor. She does whatever she can do for her team.
I really appreciate it, Jenny.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question, please?
Always.
Okay, thank you. Postseason's always been considered kind of a guard-oriented team. The better guards you have, the better chance you have. And of course, we know about the great centers, and you were a great center, and you've got a great center in Beers and things. Is postseason still about guards? And if it is, do you feel like you're well equipped as you get ready to go into postseason?
Well, there's some great guards that have come out, and there obviously have been some great centers too. So it's not always about one thing. I think there's multiple, it's always about the team and what the teams do. I don't know of one team that's only had one player that has led them the whole way. I mean, you might have a leader on your team, but you got to have a cast. And I think we can see that in the game of basketball. That's the beautiful part of basketball is you can have a star, but you still have to have a pretty good, rest of your team. And you want to have really good team chemistry. And so that's what we're going to focus on. So yes, there have been great guard play. There's been, so much talent, and that's why you elevate, but also the best teams always elevate the most.
Yeah, thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Anything else, guys?
Yeah, Jenny, I want to ask you one more question. Just the schedule of this tournament compared to the Big 12 schedule. Obviously, uh, last year you experienced a little bit more of the shift back and further away from Selection Sunday, things like that. But this tournament with the buys and the way it's structured, how much different is that? You alluded to it a little bit with the difference between the two teams you could face in the first game, but how much different is it as a coach to work through?
I don't know if I can really answer that question yet. I can speculate, but having it a week ahead is something that I don't remember having this. I know I have it as a head coach. Last year, you're right, was the first year, but everything changed at that point because you had new teams, and then you were off Sunday, and so it was just a little bit. It was a little bit more unique. Where this one, having a double buy and then a buy, that's different. I think it'll also be different in game because the exposure that the SEC gives, especially to women's basketball, is at an elite national level. So I think that will be also interesting to experience as well during the tournament, to get that kind of a tournament feel, which I can't answer yet, and I will. But it is interesting looking at, okay, well, what do you do next week? Right? Because we haven't had that. We've had, okay, and then you got to come back, and then you got to prep for selection show, and now you have some time in there. So there's some of that we don't necessarily know. We have ideas of how we want to manage all of that, but it is different. It's very different.
Appreciate it, Jenny. Good luck in Greenville.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Anything else from anyone? Perfect. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you.
Jenny, Josh,
Thank you.
thanks. Have a great day.
Thank
Thanks.
you all. Have a good one.
Guys. Talk to
Thank
you